All right. Good evening, LinkedIn. Dave Wilson during a hire show. Hey, listen, tonight I got a special guest, and everybody's going to love this story of why I picked Mr. Joe Makston there to come on the show tonight. How you doing, Joe?
I'm great. Thanks so much.
How in the heck is Arizona right now at this time of day?
It is hot. I have a button-up shirt on, but I have shorts on on the bottom, kind of living a little bit of pandemic again.
Oh my God. All right, everybody, we'll be right back after this video, but you're going to like tonight's show. I got 3 parts of it that we're going to talk about, and we'll be right back after this. Now, don't you think that sums it all up in one story?
Oh my gosh, yes. That's like an epic. You want to be like, what's next? Tell me.
Well, I saw the video of the guy on Fever app, right? I saw that, and I'm thinking staffing. So I started writing one words down, and I envisioned it. He knew me from before, so I envisioned it being pounding, but I didn't think it would be like a regular show. So everything I always talk about is on that video.
It's perfect.
All right. Hey, everybody. Tonight, there's 3 things I want to talk to Joe about tonight, and I'm going to introduce him here in a second. So I always scroll through LinkedIn, each night and during the day once in a while, not during work. And I look and I see this guy doing a video, day 1 of unemployment. Okay. I watched it, scrolling down through a link. Oh, I liked it. Next day again, day 2 of unemployment, and he's doing videos. I'm like, what the heck? Well, you're on day 32 now, Joe. Yeah. But this gentleman here documents every single day, and he talks about it and what he does being laid off. So, Joe, I'm going to ask you right off the bat, introduce yourself first, but then we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, David. So I am Joe Makston. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I was laid off 32 days ago. I worked for a tech company, oversaw employee experience. And I got 2 kids. One just went to ASU yesterday, and I have another who's a junior in high school. I've been in the Valley since actually high school myself. Grew up in Tucson. A little bit more about my book around growing up in Tucson and what that looks like. So I'm honored to be here, David. Thank you. And Sherry, thank you.
Oh, you know Sherry? There's Sherry. Please, if you know anything about Joe, please bring it up. But what made you, and I know people will go now, you got to connect with Joe. You got to look at his videos, because I'm going to give you an example. One day, Joe's sitting there, he takes up this video, he goes, he's trying to figure out what he wanted to talk about. I don't know what day it was, but you're like, all of a sudden, some things happened, and you're like, you know what? Let me just do it about unexpected things happening. And I had to laugh. But what made you do this, Joe?
We are seeing really unprecedented layoffs.
Yeah.
In my career so far, this is unprecedented. And we knew that organizations were over hiring because they needed to pivot when we went through the pandemic. And at some point, the market's got to level off. And so recently I've seen so many people losing their jobs and posting on LinkedIn. And so when I got into my car that Thursday, a little surprised that I was being laid off, and then I actually drove to Utah. I came home, kind of rested a little bit, and then I drove to Utah, and I started thinking about what is it that I want to say about this specific experience, and I wanted to provide a voice for all the people that have lost their jobs, are still looking for jobs, are further ahead than me. I saw somebody today that's on, I think, day 87, And so the level of stress that comes with
it's a lot. It is a lot.
I felt like it was important for you to feel like you're not alone. Somebody else is experiencing this. We are a very strong community, and you just don't know who you might help by just sharing part of your story, because I think story matters so much. And this is definitely a space of where if I can encourage somebody else, or they can say, oh yeah, I'll try that, or hey, I've been there. And you know, one of my posts was, it really is hard today. Like I was full
You
on
were
crying.
yourself, Joe. You were yourself, and I'm going to say that in a humble way. You were. Some days I could tell you were stressed, but the way you did it, the way you turned it around, and you did your 3-minute video. I'd say what, close to like 3 minutes of what's going on in your life, and you're looking for work, and I felt inspired to reach out to you, and you were like, yes, right away. I was like, yes. I told my wife, I gotta get this guy on. Of everybody on LinkedIn that hasn't connected with him, Sherry says he was one of my clients, and I was laid off a week before him. He was always such a wonderful partner, and I'm still learning from him. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you, Sherry.
That's awesome, Sherry. And then Rob. All right, now Rob's in Pittsburgh. Rob, I want to make sure you connect with Joe here, because I want you to make a video every day, because you need a little happiness. So I got to get Rob in there. He's looking for work also. But what do you feel you get out of that, Joe, while you're trying to help when you're talking? Because I can tell you're stressed sometimes, but yet you say you do a couple retakes and you'll do it again. What do you get out of that, do you think?
Well, I'm an out loud processor, and
okay.
It really helps me get some of the emotion out. It's stressful, knowing, you know what, I got 4 months, I've got to find another job. And I'm grateful that I got a package where I have a little bit of breathing room, but I've got 2 kids. I got one in college now. I got a mortgage to pay. So that stress, I need to figure out, well, how am I going to manage that stress? And for me, it's being able to say it out loud and remind myself in a moment of where I'm stressed of what are the leadership principles that I try to live out every day. Because it's not like, well, I'm going to be a leader again when I start working at another company or I start mentoring somebody. Well, no, I have to be able to lead myself before I can lead anybody else. So by saying it out loud, for me, it reminds me, it cues me in a different space.
I think what you said right there, I like that, reminds you. So I can see that what you're saying when I hear you talk on your videos, because I'll be looking for tomorrow's, and the way you think of those things, I know what you're saying there. I like that.
Yeah. And the video that you kind of let out with was extremely frustrating, because I thought, man, I have the best idea. I can't wait to do this video. And I did that thing 7 times. There were a lot of swear words, so I would have had to redo it anyway, because I was so frustrated with myself.
Right.
And then just realizing, oh, this is how life is. Life throws you curveballs, and then, all right, well, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to be like, this sucks, and then be mad about it and start thinking smaller about that situation? Or are you going to shift and say, all right, well, what can I learn about myself? Does this really matter?
Have you had people reach out to you and talk to you about anything? Have they said anything about on messages to you, or?
Yeah, I get a lot of messages from people for 2 reasons. One, saying, like Sherry said, hey, I'm on day 26 of being laid off. Thank you so much. This is an encouragement. A couple of days ago, I talked about who are your people? Like, who are the ones you can trust? And so then some people have messaged me saying, hey, I have this person, I have this person. And then a lot of people are just saying, I'm just in a dark place right now. I'm having a hard time. And just watching your video just encourages me.
It does, because me and Rob are good friends, and Rob's looking for work now too. And I've been there. We all been there. I always say, if I was to lose my job tomorrow, I always prepare myself for that, if that makes sense to you. I've always prepared, because I don't take nothing for granted. Tomorrow I could go to work and then I could lose my job. I told you about my when I closed the business, it was heartbreaking. It was terrible. I had that bad feeling. But then when I got that job call after 10 interviews, different things, wow, you feel totally different. So I understand when people go through this. Like you said, you have the kids, your health care, and I don't want to say things that make you what you're going through, but it's true. You got to fight these feelings that you're going through, and I think what you're doing, to me personally, I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think the reality is that we sometimes forget, what's ahead of us and what we've already experienced. And so this has actually been a chance for me to be able to reflect on what I've done like really well,
right?
What I want to do differently. So in the reality, like for me and for a lot of Americans, and for people in other countries, like I have to have healthcare. And
yeah, you do.
Right now, I'm trying to like work through Cobra, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is really complicated. And I have some friends that can help me through it.
Yep.
So each one of those experiences, like, okay, now I got to figure out my finances. I got to figure out my insurance, and what do I do? Who can I ask? And not everybody has access to be able to get the help that they need and the support that they need.
Do you reckon, Joe, have you learned anything from there? Like when you talk about like healthcare, oh, we got Kenny Dunner in the house. I'm sorry. You have to connect, Joe, with Kenny. Are you connected with him? This gentleman here, Mr. Kenny Dunner, you connect with him and you're going to have a trip. This guy's a great man in Texas. He's just great. But when you said about like healthcare, I relate to that from a story. When I had lost the business, I had no healthcare for the first time in my life, being in the 50s. And I fell down a cliff, 50-foot cliff, onto the rocks on the boulder, split my head wide open. Totally. I was able to call 911. They pinged it. My wife kind of knew where I was. They found me sprawled out. They didn't know if I was paralyzed. Took 25 firefighters, 2 rock climbing things, helicopter, no health insurance. Joe, it was like over 400-something thousand.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing that I can go through, I think, if I lost a job versus that. Do you know what I mean? Because it gets you hard. It does, So that was my little story there, but it hits you hard because I don't think I'll ever forget that feeling.
Yeah, you're right. The stress of it. Like I take medication. If you read my book, I have multiple sclerosis. Have to take medication every day. And so if I don't have health insurance, to try and figure out how do I pay for that, it really is a need that we have in society. So removing the friction of easy access to healthcare across the U.S., I think is extremely important.
It is. Sherry says your village is so important. Surrounding ourselves with like-minded positivity is so important, especially, and I think she's totally right there. And I agree totally. Joel's right here. He's got a show coming up with me on Friday with we're leadership. We're doing a show on experience versus education. So that ought to be a good one with Joel here. Welcome, Joel's in there. He's a great one to connect with. But I like how you say that, the way you word it, because you have so many people going through the same thing. And if they see, listen, I see positivity from you because I like listening to you. I think it's funny. I love it. I'm like, how does he come up with that? Like that. But I just think it inspires a lot of people. And congratulations to you on that.
Thank you. I think it's important to.
I want you to read this, Joe, from Kenny. You appear to be such a
debonair, sophisticated, stellar. Wow.
Look at this. Stanford gentleman who shares his goodness with others for the betterment of humankind is also intelligent, gorgeously handsome, looking so impeccably well dressed too. See, how can you top that when you're doing the show? How does it make you stop?
I know. Ken,
look at that.
Can you be my spokesperson? Like you should definitely write intros for me.
Really, but before we go on this next topic, though, I want to thank you for doing what you got to do, and everybody out there watching, you got to check out. Now we're going to put more pressure on you, Joe. Every day, he does a video because he's on day 32 unemployment.
Day 32.
So we're hoping that'll just get lower and lower. But the other reason I wanted to bring him on was, and I didn't know it, and Joe's telling me this. This is great. So it's Creosote, your new book, right? Creosote Rain.
Yep,
all right,
that's right.
So you can get this on Amazon, and we're going to go over. I'm going to let Joe explain to what it's about. But he just released a book, and this was released while you're on unemployment right now. So I mean, I think that's such a great. It's got to be such a good feeling, isn't it?
It feels wonderful. Yes.
All right.
over a year's work to put this book together.
So why don't you go ahead and just explain to what the book's about? In short, we'll talk about it. I have a couple questions for it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Creosote Rain, a Carnival Kid's quest for home, family, and belonging is the whole title. So it's a story about a kid who grew up in Tucson, Arizona.
Now this is you. This is your story.
Yep, this is my story. So this is a memoir, a story about me and my family. So I have 3 siblings, my mom, and then I had stepdad growing up. And my family, we grew up on the traveling carnival through junior high. So it's these experiences really around parents that didn't have the capacity to show up for their kids and really take care of them, and what happens through that. So I'm not going to give all of it away, but the desert of Tucson now is just a beautiful landscape. I love going to Tucson. Here in Phoenix, I can kind of be to the desert in just a couple of minutes.
Right.
But the meaning behind Creosote Rain, creosote is a bush in the deserts. When it gets wet, it secretes an oil, and it smells a little bit like dust and a little bit of a earthy woods smell. And so when we were kids growing up, somebody would say it smells like rain. And what that actually meant was the creosote bushes are actually wet, which means rain is actually coming.
It's coming.
And, my childhood was really focused around the desert we typically see: dry, desolate, parched, trying to survive. There just wasn't a space for me or my siblings to really thrive. So when people came into our lives that came alongside us and said, "Hey, I want to be an encouragement to you," and we had wonderful people that allowed us to live with them. I had a friend from church who let me live with her through high school, that created safe space. Ultimately, the book is about community, faith, whatever faith you are a part of, just knowing that you're part of something greater. And then 4 years of deep trauma therapy, and what that did for me, just being able to accept really who I am as a whole person. So yeah, that's kind of the high level of the book, and discovering that our stories really matter, and giving Joey a voice. I call my younger self Joey, little 6-year-old, little 9-year-old, because he matters.
It matters. Sherry says my copy arrived over the weekend. So did I, Sherry. But mine was Mine was in the rain a little bit for while I was on vacation. Joe said it was coming on Monday, but I think I got it on Saturday. But it's pretty much dried out now, and I'm excited to read it because I want to learn more about the Carnival Kid. I'm thinking, because when you say that, I'm thinking, do you get to play the games a lot? Do you get to eat a lot of cotton candy?
You think, yes, that's what it is, but it was work. It was a job for my family. So my mom, she was in charge of the ticket booths. My stepdad worked one of the games. My sisters, they babysat, or they worked somewhere else, and which left me 4 years old and my brother 5 years old to take care of ourselves.
I like that.
So, when I talk about parents that don't have the capacity to take care of their kids, my mom did her best, from her own story. And, unfortunately, that's still imposed trauma, like it does for a lot of families. My brother and I were taking care of ourselves when we were 4 and 5, and we're put into some very, very unhealthy and unsafe situations. Unfortunately, we landed in the backseat of a cop car twice in like 2 weeks.
And your geez, Joe, we're gonna go back to a question here, and we're gonna go right back to the book. But Rob was saying about the whole unemployment process is extremely stressful too. There has to be a better way for filing unemployment. No matter how many years, because I've been on unemployment a couple of times throughout my life, it is hard. But I try to say this, respectively too, is you have to learn a lot about it. You have to really always know in the back of your mind, for example, ID me. A lot of people have a problem, when all of a sudden they get unemployment, you have to get ID'd first, and it's to a third party. And it seems like a lot of people get strung up on that part because they've never done it before. And then if you do it wrong, you might not hear from somebody from 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
you know, and I understand what he's saying is stressful, because you really need to, if everybody's watching this for that's unemployment, just listen. With Google nowadays and YouTube, you can YouTube it probably even. You know, what are the key takeaways that have you learned, Joe, even from unemployment?
So I actually don't have any experience with the unemployment process. I have been trying to figure out, do I need to file for unemployment? Because I just don't know if I qualify or anything. So, you know, when you're in the workforce,
Yeah.
The conversation just doesn't happen. So
Yep.
now I'm in a space of, should I apply for unemployment? How do I do it?
Yep.
I would actually do the same thing you just said. I would Google how to apply for unemployment and see if there are
Yeah.
resources here in the city, and I would leverage somebody else who knows how to do it. So I'm not doing it on my own.
See, LinkedIn's good for this too, because I feel questions like this, there's nothing wrong with asking questions on LinkedIn even. You know, if you put a question out there, listen, there's a lot of people that have gone through the stressful times with unemployment and have learned from it. So, like Rob, you know, that's why I say to Rob, even post something on there. Hey, you know, how do you do this? How do you do that? Or reach out to your connections, like now tonight, making new connections, you know, especially Kenny. I mean, you're going to write out there and you got to get Kenny. I mean, anybody that writes something like this, you know, but in all seriousness, you know, learn a little about it. And Joel says, let them decide if you're unqualified. And then Kenny, Joel, oh, great reminder. That's true. And then this is my first time too. You should apply. All right. But that, where I want to go with that, Rob. So I hope, Rob, that answers you a little bit, but just try to ask your colleagues. And Joe, if you have anything to toss in there.
Yeah. And for me, so we grew up really poor. We had government commodities when I was really young. The church filled in the gaps with food boxes. So I actually have a negative perspective on asking for help.
Right.
In
I
that
get it.
space.
I get it.
And I'm not realizing it until right now. You know, because what it says, it reminds me of the poor kid that was made fun of,
Yep.
that wore thrift store clothes. But the reality is, there's help out there.
Yes.
So I would, I'm kind of talking to myself, maybe somebody else who might be struggling with doing it.
Yeah.
There are resources out there, and they're out there for a reason.
Well, I like how you said that. I like how you said that, because it always brings me back to where when I was in the hospital, when I woke up, literally I was so scared. I was already thinking, how am I going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And the one nurse said to my wife, and overheard it. We heard her say, "Oh, he's prepay. He has to pay." I didn't get the best treatment. I was let go. I was just like, sew him up, out the door. But the resources, my wife found this one, Kentucky Helping Hand. We're in Pennsylvania. They had the top medication. And, you know, just by Googling that, who would think Kentucky Helping Hand offers free medication? I'm in Pennsylvania. She did all the paperwork. There you go. We asked, and then they gave me free medication. You believe that? First time ever in my life. But, you know, that's why I like how you say resources, you know, reach out to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some, I'm not being able to read all of the comments. So you guys are an amazing resource talking about, I should apply. Hey, here are some other locations I can go and find, just like you're saying.
Yep. I'm constantly on Indeed, LinkedIn, looking for my next opportunity, going through phone screens, any interview, and hoping that boss will give you the opportunity. You know, I feel what he's talking about there. I really do, because like you said, there's a lot of people getting laid off. And if you haven't been, Joe, your record, you have a strong work record. We're going to get into that. And I'm like, wow, you know, it's unexpectedly. So it's okay to feel that way. I feel you need to feel like that. That's just part of the process. But I think you just got to stay. It's easy for me to say now because everybody says, well, you have a job. You know, people say, oh, you have a job, you know, but you got to stay focused. And that's what I like about when you do your videos. I think that's kind of, sometimes that might even help. Does that help you like release it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it absolutely does. And I think about, what am I learning about myself? What have I experienced today? Right. You know, today's video for day 32, you know, I talked about why, like my purpose, you know, why I do what I do. And I think it reminds me to find my center. because it's so, I can so easily get distracted and overwhelmed if I keep going down that road. So knowing, okay, I got to do a video today.
Right.
And that video could be positive, or that video could be like, hey, you know what? I'm really struggling. And I was actually on a call earlier today, and that's what I said. It was for something else, but I just said, I'm just overwhelmed.
I like how you did the gym. You were at a gym and you're saying, I get to go to a gym. Everybody else doesn't get to go to a gym. And I'm like, oh my God, I started laughing because I said, there you took something positive. I get to go to the gym today. You're unemployed, but then you're like, you're not going to the gym. And I'm like, I love this. I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I just think it's great how you do that. Kenny says, Joe, I sent you a connection invite. You may accept if you dare. Sherry says there's a federal program for people who have certain disabilities or DX as well. I went down a rabbit hole trying to learn about what to do to file my claim. See, they're the kind of things that are nice to hear.
Yeah.
You know, on that part. Now we're gonna go back to this because I still have a couple questions about on the book here.
Sure.
What inspired you to make it? Like what you just sit down one day and say, you know what, I'm gonna write a book. A lot of people say that, but I guarantee that's not that easy. It takes time, right?
Yes. It is not. It is. I'm not gonna say it's not that easy. It is hard. It is so difficult to be in the practice of writing every day. I actually hired a coach to help me write my first draft because I didn't know what to do. I knew there was something there. So this was May of last year. I was still processing a little bit of my life. My life changed a lot about 3 years ago. And then over the past 3 years, I've suffered a lot of loss because of how life has changed for me.
Right.
And I was grieving that loss. And there were that Joey was trying to say, but look how healthy we are right now. Look at how much we're willing to accept our whole selves now. I just lived, if I go back to the desert analogy, I lived in this survival state, and when the rain comes, the desert comes alive. It's beautiful.
Right.
And that's the space that I had been living in. But I was so sad because of the losses that I had been through over the previous months, and then realized I think Joey needs to be celebrated. He needs to be able to share his story. In as much as me doing these videos, it's the same thing with the book.
How do you think it's helped you, Joe? Has it helped you through what you're going through with being unemployment and being unemployed? Does something doing like this really help you?
Oh yeah, it definitely helps. I have a hard time taking compliments, and so in a space of where there are days where I feel defeated, I feel like I failed. I shouldn't have lost my job. I thought I was doing a great job. And so you kind of get into this mindset. And then I started getting people messaging me, people from my childhood, and then total strangers messaging me saying, I just finished the book. Thank you so much for being brave. Thank you for helping me see Joey. It's helping me process through my own hurt. And that is so encouraging. At the end of the day, I want people to know somebody cares. So writing this book, letting know that I care about Joey, his voice matters. And hopefully you're encouraged when you read this. Okay, yes, do I have healthy community? Do I have faith in something bigger than myself? And at times, I may need to do the really hard work and talk to somebody and do some actual therapy.
That's awesome. I love it. Kenny says, I can imagine it's rough on the job market looking. I am fortunately employed at my current employer. He's been there for 35 and a half years. Nothing is life and guaranteed. And I like how Kenny says that because like I told you before, listen, it can turn on anybody without warning, I kind of knew when was unemployed. I kind of knew it was coming because I made that decision myself. But we talked before about the show, my part, what happened to me, and I don't want to get into all that, but you learn, you grow from it. You really do. And if it was happening to me, I would reach out to Kenny if I knew somebody in Texas about anything. Everybody, all your connections that you're making on LinkedIn, your friends, your family. I mean, your friends and family, I think, play a big part. Don't you believe in that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think my work family and
Yep.
my friends, and then my actual family, being there to be able to process through that. You know, my partner, I lives in Utah, and so we had already been talking about things were a little bit
Wow.
stressful at work, and he was the first person I called, and just said, "Hey, I just got laid off," and he was so encouraging. And I had already planned on driving to Utah, so I was there with my people, and then I have other people that I immediately reached out to and said, "Hey, I just got laid off," and you know, my close running friend, she's just like, "What do you need? Do you need me to like go flip tables?" Like she was willing to like carry the anger of,
Right.
because there's a reality of that. It's okay to be pissed off about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to
Yep.
be frustrated with it. And
It
if
is.
you don't feel that emotion, it's going to come up and it's going to come out another way.
Yeah.
So she was like, "What do you need from me? Do you need to just say the F bomb 1,000 times?" And it's not quite my personality to be like that angry, but we were able to
Yeah.
just like be in the frustration, and that
I
really.
see it. I see it. So I told you in your video, I was like, wow, it's hard because you're still a human being. You're
Right.
putting a video and I'm talking to you about it and I'm like grilling you about it, saying, hey, but to me, it's like an inspiration because I'm thinking, I think I could do that. I'm like, you know what? I think a way to get your anger, like you said, is that what you mean? Like, because you can get it out some other way.
Mhm.
You can get that anger because I believe in the beginning, everybody goes through when they get laid off. Listen, it's tough. If you're reaching out to a friend and they don't respond, I get it. I really do. Give it some time. I think that person needs to go through that time. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like when you loss of a loved one or, you know, something like that. You're, it's going to be okay. Your life will get back to normal. You just got a hiccup. That's the way I look at it. And between the book and your story and what you're doing now, I gotta give it to you, man. I love it.
Thank you.
You know, are you still looking to making all these videos every day, all the way to you're ready, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I do plan on actually continuing to do the videos. I've had a couple of people reach out and say, "Okay, what happens when Joe gets a job? Like, are you going to stop doing this? Because it's actually my daily inspiration. I
Right,
look forward to seeing your video." And I've thought about that. You know, again, I want people to be encouraged. I want them to know that they're not alone. So I'm
right.
trying to think about, well, what is that going to look like when I do start my new opportunity, whatever that is?
Joe, I wanted to ask you. I had two more questions about your book. Then we're going to get into your employment part.
Yeah.
What's your target audience? What do you feel your target audience would be for your book? And I like what you said before. I know you're going to say it again. But what is your who you looking for? Who would really gain from this? Do you think?
Uh, Yeah, I think there's actually two groups of people. So I'm part of the LGBTQ
Right,
community. So you know, it's a very clear thread through the book,
right,
and then I think also people who have dealt with loss. So
right,
whether it's the actual loss of a loved one, for me it was loss of a family. In the book I will tell you, my mom does leave me when I was 13,
right.
and my dad. So if you are somebody who has experienced tremendous loss and maybe you haven't healed yet, I hope this story is
Nice,
encouraging for you.
nice.
And for the gay community, I think specifically, I grew up in a very conservative Christian space, and there was zero, especially during the
Yeah.
'90s, there was zero space to be able to talk about it. And
Oh
so
yeah,
what I
definitely.
did was I pushed that out, it kind of into this desolate place because there was so much shame. So for the people in the gay community that may be experiencing it,
Right.
they find maybe some hope and some healing.
I love it. I love it. And I tell you, I got mine. I know you get right on Amazon too. It's right on Amazon. Well,
Yeah.
definitely, I'll have Joe definitely put that on the comments section before, you know, tonight. Just type in there how they can get it, and we'll ask them on there. Now, my favorite part. Oh well, one more question on this. How long did it take you to write? How long does it take to write a book like this? Because this ain't small.
It is not small. And
No.
a quick story. So I actually did I did a beta read with a group of 8 friends.
Right.
It was like 79 pages, just like 8.5 by 11, 79 pages. And it was horrible. I'm embarrassed that I even gave the book to those people. But what I really appreciate about it was they took the time to read through it and they said, this doesn't make sense. I don't understand that. I need to know more about this. And it helped me do a revision.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
To Joey's story. So, we just don't know when we're in a space to receive feedback. It really is a gift, and it's what made this book better than it was. So I made the decision to write it in May of last year.
Okay.
So I started writing in June of last year. I did an announcement on social. It was the middle of June. I was in the mountains in Utah, and I did a video saying, I'm going to write a book. This is what it's about. And if you go back and watch that video, that's not what Creosote Rain is. I thought the book was supposed to be about me growing up without a dad and then finding my place as a man, healthy man and a healthy dad. But this book was more important to write. Joey needed a voice first. So
love it. I love it. So everybody, please get your copy. Go to Amazon and get your copy. I love it. And I'm going to have Joe back on a couple more shows we talked about. Now I want to take about 10 minutes. Well, we're going 30, almost 40 minutes. I love it. I love it. I want to talk about you, Joe. You're in Phoenix, Arizona, right? So what is Joe looking for? What are you looking for? Is there something that you're looking to do or anything like that? What kind of work?
Yeah. So I am. I'm gonna put the
put the link
in the comments. Yeah.
Hey, Christian, there she is. I'm excited to get my book. There she goes, right there, Christian. Christian, she'll get it. Do you know Christian?
Kristen and I are connected on LinkedIn. Yes.
Yeah, she comes on the show too. We do shows on AI.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I'd love to be a part of that conversation. I think
all right, Christian, you heard it. He's going to come on with us, Christian. We're going to do that, all 3 of us. Then that'll be awesome if you love that stuff.
David, I actually don't see that I have the ability to drop it in the chat, so I'm going to drop it to you.
Okay, then I'll put it over there. And I'll put it on the link when we get off. You can go on the show when they share it over. You can put it over on that part too. Yeah. So, okay. But we talked about you're in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm way in Pennsylvania. But if there's a way anybody listening, we're going to tag some companies, anything you want.
So this was a really hard decision, and it's been part of the process for me of, well, what is it that I want to do? I have experience in designing leadership development programs. I worked in banking for 20 plus years. I was working for a fintech for early warning services, the creators of Zelle. But as I was laid off, so I led contact center and so forth. Ultimately, my last role was the head of employee experience. So when I think about, well, what is it that I want to do? The natural response is, I'm going to go work for another company. I'm going to find an employee experience job, or I'm going to find a leadership development job. As people started reaching out to me, the common thread that I heard from them was, Joe, you really impacted my life. Yes, it was through the leadership development program, or yes, it was through the employee experience programs that you designed, but more so it was because of who you were. And so I had people starting to ask, hey, can I meet with you? Oh, you should talk to this person that they're actually looking to design a program. And that really led me to the space of maybe it's time to start my own consulting and coaching. And that's actually the decision that I've made. You guys are actually the first official people to hear.
There we go, right?
And so I plan on coaching and consulting in the leadership development and employee culture experience space. So helping people design programs. I have experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with community impact. So there's kind of a swath of things that I do, but I want to specifically focus on leadership development because I really believe that leaders are the #1 reason why somebody stays or goes.
or goes.
The experience that you create, you can have great benefits, you can have a great company culture, but if your leader's a jerk or they're not showing up and disengaged,
Yep.
you're out.
You're out.
You might not actually leave, but you may do something worse, and that is stay and not be productive.
Love it.
And
Love
companies
it.
can't afford to do that. So I want to be able to help companies recognize the problems that they have, reduce turnover, and help design programs where leaders are saying, I want to say, and I want to be engaged and connected with my employees.
That is awesome. Sherry says, you've always been a light, even in corporate America. Thank you for continuing to be that light. Much appreciated. And there we go, Christian. Now, Christian, he said he would do a show on AI with us. So we're gonna make this thing work in a couple weeks. Within 2 weeks, us three will be on the show. But she says, I could totally see you coaching and consulting.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. And I really am excited about the AI space. I think leveraged well, it can help you grow in your career.
Well, I think with your experience, I was looking, you're the only, see, I always print a lot. I always say I do trees. So, Joe, yours is 5 pages.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn PDF, it's 5 pages. But you got one hell of a work record. I mean, when I look at the job titles, you're very loyal, whoever you work for, because you've been there for years at each company, and that you can see. But I mean, Director of Employee Experience, Director of Learning Talent Development, Client Care Solutions Manager, Contact Center Management, Client Care Fraud Division, Client Care Solutions Manager. Everything has something to improve.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like my story. I see a problem and I want to go and solve it. So when in my banking career, that ended up being what I did. I would finish one problem and the company would come to me and they say, hey, all right, we have a problem in this space. We need to go solve the fraud issue. Can you figure this out? Yes. In most of my jobs, I did not know how to do that job when I first started. I literally went and found people, did a ton of reading, found experts.
Oh, you're right there. I love, again, when people say stuff like that, because just what you said, sometimes like you don't have to, I know it sounds weird, you don't have to know the job, but the training, a lot of companies have the employees right there. They have them in their workplace. You know what, if they went back, I always say my age, well, back in the day, you had on the job training. That's the only thing you learned when the paper industry with my parents, you got out, you know how to do this? No. You forklift, you know how to do that? No. You get trained. Companies, I really wish they would just invest sometimes within those candidates. And what you just said there, and lasting 7 to 10 years at jobs and not knowing the job and learning it, that's a success story.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with you. I think companies should invest more. And you're starting to see the dollars per employee very slowly increase. But is it in the right space? For a company to say, hey, we spend $1,600 per employee, but that pays for all the compliance training, and you're not getting leadership development, you're not getting customer success, you're not getting problem solving.
They did that years ago, Joe. They did that years ago. I'm sure you've seen that. I've seen it in a lot of companies, and I just wish some of them do some great training, but I really believe that people need that. People need that, and that investment. It's only a small investment. That's nothing, because you're like you talked about the retention of the employees. You're keeping them there. You're keeping that person there because you're giving them a chance to learn something. They're going to stay, and that will turn around you on a dime. I'm telling you.
And a lot of the practices haven't changed significantly.
Right.
When we think about coaching, when we think about providing feedback, setting expectations, delegation, like those things haven't changed. The way we do them have changed. But the reality is it's the practicing piece. So if a company was like, well, what, Joe, what was the one thing that you would say? I'd say you need to allow your leaders to practice and then create space for them to talk about it. Same thing with your employees. Create space for them to talk about it, because the beauty of sharing stories is I realized, oh, David knows something that I don't know. Kristen knows something I don't. Ooh, maybe I can connect with them.
Yep.
I can learn a new skill, and then we're better for it as a company, because now I just don't have one skill. I have 3 skills.
Yep, 3.
I could fill in for David. I could fill in for Kristen.
And they will stay. they will stay. Two more questions for you. So we talked about what you're looking for and everything like that. Joe, why should somebody, what do you have to offer a company? And I mean that in a way like, your strengths and what you feel that you can offer.
Yeah, I think the first piece is spending time listening, instead of just saying, well, here's the package, this is what you get. Spending time hearing what the problem is with a company, and designing something that's specific to them. Again, the main buckets haven't changed. So when somebody talks to me, I'm going to spend time talking with their employees, talking with their leaders, because I really want to understand the culture, because that is going to give you better insights on, well, what is our current state, and where are things going really well, and how do we amplify that, and then the areas of where things are, where you're struggling, what do we do to prioritize to start to reduce those areas of where we're not doing well. So I think what I bring to the table is this unique ability to be able to engage with all levels of an organization, because I started as a part-time teller at Bank of America when I was 18 years old. And I literally worked from a part-time teller all the way up to working, leading a branch and doing computer conversions for the company. And then I went to another bank, and then I worked my way up to be a department head, to be the problem-solving person for the organization, and so forth. When I went over to early warning, the same thing. So somebody who has a unique experience of actually doing the work, being next to the employee. A lot of times you don't see that as often anymore. Somebody goes straight from their MBA into a senior level role, and they have this strategy piece, but the day-to-day operations, like I've done that work, I've been there. I've had people yelling at me on the phones. I know what it's like, along with leaders just saying, I'm so tired. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And creating space for them to talk about it so we can figure out, well, what's the path forward?
And that's what I've learned from you right now. I listened. I was just listening to you talk. And if I was interviewing, they're the kind of things that I look for, what you said. Nothing was about yourself. It was all about listening into the client. Like, what are your problems? What are you having issues with? Let me fix it. And let me see if I can help you. Not once did you do anything about me. You talked about the client. So that's why I love, I'm very strong on video. And the reason I like it is because, listen, this is Joe right here. All right. This is Joe. This is Joe right now on the show. And what I like about it is, compared to a PDF, we talked earlier about what bias and all that. And I've always felt people are biased. We all have it in us. And you're going to be biased as soon as you walk into that interview door. Mm-hmm. But being on video, we've learned so much about you tonight that's what I wish people would go towards more than just the resume. That's just me. I feel strong because listening to you, like the last question I want to ask you here is, if I had a bunch of your friends in this place right here, right now, and you were outside, what would your friends tell me about you?
Oh, what a beautiful question, David.
What would they tell me about you?
They would say, I love Joe. Like he cares so much for me as a person. He's authentic, he's vulnerable, he's willing to like talk about the crap that other people aren't willing to talk about, because he wants to make sure that somebody feels like they're cared for. And he makes damn good chocolate chip cookies.
See, now you know when you get a job, you got to go. You're gonna have to make chocolate chip cookies. See that question there. When I asked Joe that question, you see a smile on his face. And that's what I believe is the character, and you can't put it in a PDF. You can't tell that. You can just tell when you go and connect with Joe, you're going to see the real person, and that's why some people, you got to admit, man, making those videos are hard, and you can't really care what you think about, because if not, man, you'll be sitting there all day. I remember doing that, man, 10 different times, throwing the phone, and I was like, this is hard.
Yeah. Well, and David, I think about the space that I'm in, and the opportunity that I have to be able to influence somebody. Our brands, wherever we show up, it does matter. And in the LinkedIn space, they're professionals. We are learning more and more about who's actually on LinkedIn. If we looked 4 years ago, it was mostly people looking for jobs.
For jobs, yeah.
3 years ago, people looking for jobs. Now you're starting to see a network moving, and then even in the social space on LinkedIn, on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, you're starting to see people say, "Oh, tell me more." So the way you show up wherever it is really matters. And I want to be Joe right here. I want to be Joe. My kid came home right before we started. I want to be Joe when my kid walks in. When I see I want to be the same person. So I would encourage you, if you're somebody who is looking for a job, think about your brand, and how are you presenting yourself. Even in the struggles, it's absolutely okay to be in the struggle. I wouldn't encourage anybody to be like, you should be happy. Just no, things suck sometimes, and it's okay to be in that space. Have safe people around you, and then think about not only your resume, the paper, because it's just paper.
See, I try to get about you and see how you talk. You care about other people. That's what I've gotten from you already. Here, I asked you the question of tell me about yourself, and you're talking about what you do and what you care. And this is why I just love this interview here. And for anybody, please, I did put the link in the comment section. It's right in there. All right. I'm going to thank everybody for coming on the show. But right here, Chris Rain on Amazon, the link is on there. Please, PM Joe, connect with him. And Kenny, I'm going to leave this last huge comment. Let's see what Mr. Kenny has right here. My friends will say that I'm such a suave, debonair, sophisticated. Oh, geez, here we go. Distinguished, appeared, gentleman, scrumptious. Look at that. See? How do you even finish? And sweet potato cheesecake. Kenny, where the hell did that come from? He's a friggin' nut, man. He is a nut, but he's a great guy. Embrace the suck. I love that. Embrace the suck. I used to tell my students that. Oh, my God. Can you imagine that? Joe, just embrace the suck. Jesus.
There's the reality. The Art of Not Giving an F. What was a fantastic book I read last year, or maybe it was earlier this year. But the reality is, you're not going to please everybody, and so you have to be able to embrace the hard stuff and the easy stuff, because it all is part of life, and it makes us who we are. Because we have this rich story that we get to tell.
Love it. Joe, thank you so much. And Christian, I'll be reaching out to you. So I'll be sending you a message this week and maybe next week, man. I hope all three of us can connect to do that show. But Joe, thank you so much for coming on tonight and talking about your book. And I told you you're going to come back on again because I just feel I like to have you back on the show. And we want to do some leadership stuff too. And wish you luck on everything that you do there. And I'll be looking for that video tomorrow. So all right, no pressure, but I'm going to be commenting on him. I'm like, all right, here he goes. So Thank you so much, Joe, and we'll be in touch, everybody. Thank you for watching the show tonight, and Joe, I'll talk to you right after this video again.
All right, thanks so much.